Welcome to DRTSPR show. This is Dr. Tangella Shiva Prasad Reddy alias Dr. TSPR. Namaste, Adab, hello and a warm welcome to the Narasimha Reddy Garu. Once again, we are continuing with where we left yesterday, Friday, on the union budget, whether it is interim budget or election budget, poll budget, whether it is in public interest or corporate interest, whether the figures which are being shown are true, whether it is inflation. Inflation means you relate 2020 rates of your oil pulses 80 rupees. Now 2024, 2040, 50 rupees. Is the farmer getting the benefit? No. And when we go to buy, we are paying heavily. Where is this amount going? This is where we say corporate. That is what we are trying to say. So that is the basic difference between hoarding and storage. Storage will go to all those government controlled Food Corporation of India godams or warehouses. When you say hoarding, you see Adani, Ambani coming up with big warehouses, cold storage, these things. They will export, they will dictate, they will buy at a cheap rate from farmers. They will store it, allow inflation, allow the prices to rise, create artificial demand of scarcity in the market. Tomatoes you have seen, onions you have seen, potatoes you have seen how they try to create that crisis. It will be not even fetching 5 rupees, whether it is 100 rupees kilo when we are buying or when we are being at 15 rupees. Farmer will never get that rate of more than 5. So that is why these are important. And I'll just show some visuals before we start from where we left. And Narasimha Reddy Garu was clearly defining what is corporate interest, how corporates were trying to hijack. And this I have shown you again to reiterate the corporate interest. A corporate's hijack union budget, agriculture is no longer a priority of the Modi government. I have already shown you figures. It is only one point. Again, I'll try to show you that figure so that you will not get confused as to what is the... This is how Ministry of Defense, again high. We create that sort of disturbances on our borders with China, Pakistan, and you start experimenting as Israel and do on Palestinian. Nothing against. So arms race, arms, commissions to parties, and definitely we have to protect ourselves. We don't deny that. But before protecting, should we survive with food and agriculture, with rural economy? That is agriculture. It is at 1.27 when you compare with 6.2. You say global interest, everything. Why we are still spending so much on defense? And why even those who are laying down their lives, how their families are being looked after? That is another big story. I'll come back later in a detailed way. So this is, I wanted to show you, and already I've shown you some things. And this also, be wary of another COVID-like thing, cervix. I am a doctor into journalism. I demand you release the reports of trial reports first, let public understand what is cervical cancer, why this thing happens. What is the simple mechanism to prevent cervical cancer instead of these chemically motivated vaccines? How they have minted money during 2020, only pharmacies and insurance companies, politicians and all those through commissions, but not common man. Common man lost lives, lost his employment. But these fellows, they have made merry. Again, they are creating this fear psychosis. Don't fall for it. Simple. What does this vaccine contain? Ye tika mein kya hai? Ye tika lo emundi. A roga mendi. Oh, what is the disease all about? Just show few clippings which you have received of late. This is what he said in 2014. Modi
स्पष्ट मत है कि विदेश से काला धन वापस लाएंगे और जो फिक्स सैलरी वाले लोग हैं, बंधी हुई आय वाले लोग हैं और जो ईमानदारी से इनकम टैक्स भरते हैं, देश के लिए मर्यादित इनकम होने के बावजूद भी सैलरी वाले लोग इनकम टैक्स देते हैं। जिन्होंने देशभक्ति का काम किया, उनका क्या गुनाह? जो चोर लुटेरे ले गए, उनको तो कोई पूछने वाला नहीं है, लेकिन जो ईमानदारी से टैक्स भरता है, उसकी कोई परवाह नहीं है। और इसलिए हमारा निर्णय है कि विदेश से जो काला धन वापस लाएंगे, उसमें से कुछ परसेंटेज ये जो रेगुलर सैलरी वाले लोग इनकम टैक्स भरते हैं ना, उनको इनाम के रूप में वापस देंगे। उनकी देशभक्ति की इज्जत की जाएगी।
आप लोग रोना बंद कीजिए। मेरे तक आवाज आ रही है?
मेरी तो बिल्कुल स्पष्ट मत है।
See why? Because why I'm playing this is he's going to start with corporate taxes. Why they are happy? They will borrow more at a reasonable interest rate. I will not get my interest when I play all these videos. I am blacklisted by that bloody Sibyl who have servers in America. We will not get loans. But Modi ji, he is one time they said 15 lakhs Kala Dhanse. Now here he is trying to appease employees who are regular taxpayers. So that is why next topic he will be going to our employment. Why they have not given benefits in tax in spite of inflation. Now what Modi ji said in
कि विदेश से काला धन वापस लाएंगे और जो फिक्स सैलरी वाले लोग हैं, बंधी हुई आय वाले लोग हैं, और जो ईमानदारी से इनकम टैक्स भरते हैं, देश के लिए मर्यादित इनकम होने के बावजूद भी सैलरी वाले लोग इनकम टैक्स देते हैं। जिन्होंने देशभक्ति का काम किया, उनका क्या गुनाह? जो चोर लुटेरे ले गए, उनको तो कोई पूछने वाला नहीं है, लेकिन जो ईमानदारी से टैक्स भरता है, उसकी कोई परवाह नहीं है। और इसलिए हमारा निर्णय है कि विदेश से जो काला धन वापस लाएंगे, उसमें से कुछ परसेंटेज ये जो रेगुलर सैलरी वाले लोग इनकम टैक्स भरते हैं ना, उनको इनाम के रूप में वापस देंगे। उनकी देशभक्ति की इज्जत की जाएगी।
आप लोग रोना बंद कीजिए। मेरे तक आवाज आ रही है?
आ रही है मोदी जी?
मेरी तो बिल्कुल स्पष्ट मत है।
तो हम स्टॉप करेंगे यहाँ। मोदी जी के पास आवाज चले गई। तो ऐसे एक और एक I cannot take many. We have to pardon me because we have such a wonderful expert who speaks New India's journalism. See, when there is nothing about budget, just write what the finance minister ate and wore. So these are the clippings. Here is glorifying a Kasai butcher who shall lethally slay the lives of millions. We are not personally against Modi, and he is our honorable prime minister. We respect him. We go by issues, and we try to relate issues in a proper way, in a truthful way. So when there is nothing about budget, just write what the finance minister ate and wore. Wonderful. Because I am trying to play her own anecdotes. What she has said, he has already reiterated what FDI is, what DD is, you know. So I am trying to give it back to our Sitaramanji. See, free electricity, rooftop solarization. All of a sudden, this comes into their mind. Why? Why? That is a big $1 million question. Did you discuss this in the floor of parliament? Top down, he goes, he says he's coming from there, he sees something, and you should discuss in panchayats, municipalities, assemblies, and then Lok Sabha, you pass a bill so that people are aware of what you are doing. This is not Tanashahi, madam. This is not autocracy. We are a democracy, and it is people participatory constitutional democracy. Any decision which is worthwhile in public interest, we welcome this. Take it involving people. People participatory democracy is the one which would help everyone. Yes, sir. I think there are many other videos which I don't want to divert and.
Yes, thank you.
Yes, sir, please. You're trying.
Last time, I think we stopped at a point where we are trying to take on the second point, because first, I think, not only that we talked about how this interim budget is also a budget, election budget. And slowly everybody is trying to understand that as they read more about what is coming out of the budget, they know this is election budget. And if some people who have seen her performing, they're convinced about election budget. But the second point I was trying to make, it's also a corporate budget. And of course, you may ask, when was during the last 10 years, the present government's budget was not corporate budget. True.
I was about to ask you.
there is a systematic kind of, let's say, a swing towards that of corporate sector that perhaps has come with vast liberalization and the kind of ideas. It is the same finance minister who championed the cause of, let's say, corporate sector by saying they're all wealth creators. It's a very strange expression that you and I who work in a university or work for, let's say, toil on the land for wages, we are not wealth creators.
No, we are
Only
not.
those people, Modi was telling just a while ago, he showed you that those who have made money went away. With that money, they are the wealth creators. How
Yes.
much wealth they have taken along with them.
That is why I was
Nobody-
reminding of his own
Yeah.
video.
So you create them, wealth creators you create, they will take it to home. And I think right now, when I'm talking here, my own past colleague and his well-known person, Sanjay Baru, is giving a memorial lecture in Visakhapatnam in memory of Radhakrishna. The
Okay.
theme of that lecture is wealth, what is called drain. Through that of migration of high wealth groups. I think that lecture would come maybe next time we can also talk about it.
We
How
will.
much
We will.
wealth
We will.
with this.
Yeah.
Well, now coming back to, I started telling first buyers, one could notice if you, one may not like, we keep on decoding. If you dissect the secret behind applauding the finance minister reducing fiscal deficit from 5.8 revised estimate this year to 5.1 next year, behind that is that government is going to, let's say, borrow less, not spend less, borrow less. That means they are not going to compete in the market, and therefore Reserve Bank will think to reduce the interest rates, therefore we can borrow. But I think it may not work because there is the other side which they forget. Although they would favor the corporate sector, the present crisis which is totally ignored, either in this first part dramatic presentation or in the actual budget, that is the depressed kind of demand. The consumer expenditure, which accounts for about 60% of our GDP, is down under pressure because people don't have adequate money to spend. The corporate sector also feeling the pinch of it because most of the industries are working to the capacity of 75% of their built-in capacity. So because unless people have money, they come to buy, there is adequate effective demand, there will not be much of investment. Although they are celebrating now that there is going to be decline in interest rate, but it will not automatically put them into, let's say, market, production and then come to market because people don't have much purchasing power. That part is completely ignored in the budget. But let me come back to the corporate favors. If you look at, let's say, there is an interesting kind of a report brought out by the Central Board of Direct Taxes. It has released the time series data for the last 20 years about the direct taxes collected. In 2004, the total direct taxes collected in the country was 3 lakh crores.
Correct.
But now 3 lakh crores in 2004, 20 years back. In this 20 years, this total direct taxes, it includes both income tax, corporation tax.
Yep.
During this 20 years, it increased from 3 lakh crores to 30 lakh crores.
13.
It's a 30 lakh
Phenomenal.
crores.
Phenomenal.
I mean, anybody could celebrate that. See, we have achieved a lot of money. This goes with that of what we say that there has been growth, there has been high growth even before 14, higher growth before 14, obviously means that people would pay taxes, both corporate and all that. But what has happened is the composition between the corporation tax and that of, let's say, personal income tax went on changing, particularly dramatically since this government came, they started, let's say, giving a lot of concessions first, but directly, because earlier the marginal tax for personal income tax was 30%. The marginal tax during the previous regime, UPA regime, was as high as 30% for corporate sector. This government started giving, let's say, several concessions, and then they never paid 30%. It was low. But I think there was pressure, and these people favored the corporate sector, reduced the corporation tax, marginal tax, from 30% to that of, let's say, 22% in 18. That meant there's a substantial relief to that of, let's say, the corporate sector. What is interesting is there are people suffering, there are people struggling, and there are crises in agriculture. That concession doesn't go there. But there are concessions given extensively in the name of, this is where the coining of expression, they're all wealth creators, we must favor them, and they have created that.
They are wealth creators. Why concessions?
So they want to promote, it appears they are not wealth creators, meaning that they produce and create employment, and therefore you give concession, therefore people would get employment. That's their logic. In fact, when we refer to that of, let's say, the growth of this both direct, indirect, I mean, corporate and the personal income tax during the period 2004 to 14, that 10 years, the growth rate was about 14% per year.
Okay.
Actually, that growth rate has come down to that of, let's say, 11% during the last 10 years.
Okay.
This government is trying to claim that it is their achievement. Actually, the rate at which the direct taxes increased was much higher, 14% in earlier 10 years. The present 10 years, it's about 11%. At the same time, when it comes to the composition of, let's say, corporation tax and income tax, all through until 2018, the corporation tax was marginally higher. In fact, it went to almost, let's say, to the level of as much as, let's say, the difference between corporation tax and personal income tax was widened by 2018. That's where they intervened and, let's say, reduced the tax rate. Since then, there has been decline in the share. In fact, in the last, that is in 18, of the total revenues coming to that of central government, 19% was the contribution made by corporation tax, 13% was the contribution by personal income tax.
Okay.
But that has come down now to a level where the corporation tax share has come down to that of 13%, and the personal income tax also is 13%. Therefore, slowly, it is the personal income tax which is taking over. And corporates are given, let's say, quite a bit of, let's say, concession. And actually, when it comes to the question of income tax, there is also, of course, increase in income tax collection. The number of people filing income tax has also increased during these 10 years from about 3.3 crore income tax personally filed to that of 7.4. But I think all of them are not, let's say, income tax payers, in the sense that there are mandatory requirements. The banks deduct compulsorily so-called source level deduction. But I think many of them may not have adequate income. People like women, even let's say younger people, they will have a deposit of, let's say, 1 lakh of rupees, but that's also, the interest is also from the interest, that small interest, they may get, let's say, about 10,000. They will deduct, let's say, 10%, lowest, let's say, slab. So of this 7.4 lakh, actual taxpayers would be about, let's say, 5 crores of rupees. So it's not total. So the number has increased, and then when it comes to the question of the contribution of income tax by persons increased, and in fact, if you refer to that of the last 10 years, the share of, the rate at which, I'm not talking rate, the total amount contributed by personal income tax was 69%, whereas the corporate tax increased only by 48%. These buyers, when it will come to that of a fiscal deficit, there are several ways of, let's say, reducing the fiscal deficit. You can, let's say, cut expenditure, or you can raise more revenues. Anyway, you are raising more revenues to that of goods and services tax.
Yeah.
You may not be in a position to make much more than that. And at the same time, if you have to get more direct taxes, you have to raise more taxes from corporate sector. But that has not been done. And this is why I think the corporate sector is still in a celebratory mood. They would not even entertain the idea of raising the corporate tax from the present level. Okay, this is, I think, when we refer to this is the, yes, where the every rupee comes in. That's the income tax is 19 paise, means now it's that both, it includes both, no, where is the corporation tax? Yeah. The
Yes, sir.
income
17
tax is 19 paise, corporation is 17 paise. It is gradually, this share is coming down, whereas I think income tax share is increasing. Earlier it is more or less same, 13%. Now it becomes, let's say, 19% of income tax, and then say only 17%. See, it will further come down because the burden is more on, let's say, individuals rather than that of, let's say, the corporate sector. Well, now
wealth creators.
This because they are wealth creator. Now I think we turn to the actual budget, and then there also we can see as to the kind of help that corporate sector gets in. So when it comes to the question of, as we are talking, substantial part of the budget this year was devoted to that of, let's say, projecting the kind of confidence that this government has, and then what they have done, and then how they have brought about growth, higher growth, and then more perhaps to help the kind of target group. They talk in terms of, the budget opens, this part opens. Even earlier, of course, they talk in terms of the budget has, that's how she begins, that the 4 pillars of the budget is, let's say, of course, I will not use but I'll use, let's say, the poor, that's the Garib, and the second one is women, that's a MAHILA, and the third one is youth, and the last one is that of, let's say, what they refer to, the farmers. They have an expression in Hindi, so those who provide us food, that's the farmers. And these are the 4 pillars, it appears the budget addresses. Therefore, we raise a question how they address it, how they address these 4 pillars, which are perhaps, this is, I think, as someone was telling, it's quite obvious. You are saying this is not an election budget. And then you are saying that our target group for this particular budget year, the pillars of our social transformation are these 4 groups. These are the 4 groups which are very essential for election. First group, poor people. You are addressing poor people. You are addressing women. You are addressing youth. You are addressing farmers. Whom are you?
Mahila.
They just say that we are all working for them. But our question is, how best are they being, let's say, provided for in this budget, or let's say in the past year? See, when it comes to the question of, let's say, the Garib, or those who are below poverty, this government has a interesting dimensions, because they have a knack of, let's say, not releasing official data, not conducting surveys for official data. In fact, can you imagine, You are trying to show among the nations you stand tall. But this is a country where there is no census conducted.
Okay.
No other country, the poorest of countries conduct census every 10 years. And without census, you can't have basic data. Even to count your number of poor or women, youth, you have to keep on adjusting to past, let's say 2011. It is, I think, I would not, let's say, use expressions like shame, but everybody would call this as a shame. Because, how can you neglect? And then, to begin with, in this budget, what they have allocated in the last budget for conducting census, they have cut it. That means they are not going to conduct census before elections, and then it will be after elections. So only in July budget, they will provide it. I mean, therefore, the data problems exist, and therefore, when we turn to that of the poor, what they have done is the Niti Aayog has brought out a report on poverty in India, because there is a lot of criticism about poverty. If we go by, let's say, the what we refer to poverty line, which is based on expenditure of, let's say, that is based on, let's say, NSS surveys. What is the kind of consumption expenditure incurred by different people? Then we go to that of, let's say, nutritional requirement, calorie requirements. On that basis, calculate what would be the poverty line. Those who are below that expenditure are called poor people. There is a lot of criticism about that line for over a long period. Now they have come out with, I mean, it's happening all over the world, many countries. They think the poverty line based merely on consumption expenditure is not adequate. You have to have a large number of indicators. Number of countries have conducted this kind of a taking into larger components. They call this as multi-dimensional poverty. Multi-dimensional means you take into consideration status of education, health, living standards. There are about 10 indicators like that. They list them. And then, of course, India has made us 12 indicators. The way in which they calculate is they take into consideration if you are able to satisfy at least 4 indicators, you are supposed to be above poverty level. This is supposed to be very, no other country is included. They include Jan Dhan program. 90% they have opened accounts. And therefore, on that account, nobody would be below poverty. So this kind of a manipulation, they have calculated and brought out a report which says, during the last 10 years of this government, there has been 25 crores of people who have been taken out of poverty. This is widely debated question because this is a manipulation. Actually, they don't have database. They have data. This is based on what we refer to as National Family Health Survey. They have 3 times National Family Health Survey. They try to project wherever there are gaps, and they are trying to show, they take it an average. Actually, there will be a lot of fluctuations, particularly after the COVID, the kind of calamity, and then how we have seen millions of migrant workers and others coming down. There's a huge rise in poverty. There's no question of decline in poverty. And then for them to recover, it's still, many of them are left behind. But therefore, you are saying that 25 crores have come out of poverty. On that calculation, they say the poor in this country have been reduced to only 10% of the population. This is remarkable. You can, let's say, by manipulating the kind of statistics you don't create, but you create adjustments into the statistics and show this. This is doubted. I mean, therefore, when I'm talking about you are addressing the poor,
Last 10 minutes.
look at their condition properly.
Last 10
not
minutes.
by manipulating this. So
Last 10 minutes.
what is that you are doing for the poor? No, poor are concerned about their employment. Poor are concerned about, let's say, their unemployment per minute. They are concerned about the food. The same government says that they would continue to provide free ration price to the poor for another 5 years. What
83
does it
crores,
mean?
more than 83 crore families.
80 crores of people you are providing it, and you are saying poor people are only 10 crores. I mean, that they have come down to that of, let's say, and this is a lot of inconsistencies in this estimation. And all this is done why? There is nothing to address poor in this program. What are the programs for poor? For instance, one of the biggest program is that of what we refer to the Rural Employment Guarantee Program. If you look at the, let's say, Rural Employment Guarantee Program, see, way back in, let's say, 2021, the total money sanctioned to Rural Employment Guarantee Program was 60,500 crores.
Yeah.
And then, because of the crisis, they continued to increase it. In 22, that is 21-22, it increased to that of 73,000 crores.
Yeah.
In the next year, 22-23, that is the last year, it was, let's say, 73,000 crores. In this current year's budget, they have allocated only 60,000 crores.
See.
In the next year also, in this budget, you are talking about poor, you continue to allocate 60,000. The same 60,500 crores in 2021 is not the same now. There has been inflation. It is, let's say, less than 50,000 now. And then when it comes to the question of spending, but this is allocation. But when it comes to the question of spending, there is always, there is a clear kind of statistics. In none of the years after this government came, the expenditure on, let's say, MGNREGA is equal to that of allocation, is always less than. That means you don't spend.
Yes.
You create, now there is a big controversy that you have to link it with Aadhaar card. Many people do not have right kind of Aadhaar card. You link with that of what is called as the so-called biometrics. Many people who work hard in land, they don't have these fingerprints properly. They don't get that. There is a lot of controversy. That's also, delivery is also very difficult. But this is the way you treat the poor. And then, of course, what? Something more. If you refer to that of sections of people who are poor, we know that poor are mostly concentrated in scheduled castes.
6 minutes time, sir. 6
scheduled
minutes. We have 6 minutes now. Please. 6 minutes.
Sorry, I have to run. So the poor are concentrated in scheduled castes, scheduled tribes, and of course, we know that minorities in this country are poor by and large. Therefore, allocations made to these people, if you look into the last 2 years, for instance, scheduled castes, they have allocated 9,400 crores last year, but they have actually spent 6,980 crores. Similarly, scheduled tribes, they allocated 4,290 crores. They spent only about 7,000 odd crores. Minorities, they allocated 610, but spent 550. That means consistently, you talk in terms of the poor, you are not wholeheartedly putting, but many times one would expect that you would spend more, but that doesn't seem to happen. That's it. Therefore, when leave the poor now, there are 4 pillars. The second pillar, third, fourth pillar, I have to run now. Yeah. I think when it comes to the, what is youth? Yeah. If you refer to that of youth unemployment in this country is supposed to be 17%. Yeah. The recent, they have what is called as a periodic labor force survey. They show that it has come down. It has come down because of the impact of 2021 COVID effect. Many of the youngsters who otherwise would have waited for a job do some other work, some small work, because they know their parents or relatives were migrants, burning somewhere, remitting money. They're not there. All of them have to work. Similarly, women, they're all working. Poor are working in small trades. That doesn't mean that employment has increased. In fact, the CMIE, the Center for Monitoring Indian Economy, also collects data. The unemployment in the country in November, this November 23, was estimated to be 9% plus. It's a very high level. In fact, last time When COVID was there, we are talking about 8% as very high. It continues to be high. And therefore, youth unemployment is very high. When it comes to the question of youth, you talk in terms of only skill development, but we don't know how many people have got right skills. Nothing has happened. Then I think the other is Mahila. You see, they could be overlapping. A poor man could be young, a young man could be a Mahila,
4
a
minutes.
Mahila could be a farmer. 4 minutes.
minutes.
See, when it comes to the question of Mahilas, all that they have in this program is what they call as, let's say, Lakpati Didi of SHGs. It appears already there are 1 crore Mahilaye who have, let's say, borrowed about one money and then they have one. But the entire SHG program is promoted particularly in South India. There is what is Kudumbasri in Kerala. Andhra Pradesh combined state was #1 in promoting SHGs. Nothing much has been done in North India. You are claiming credit for that. They want to make 1 crore more Lakpati Didis. Lakpati Didis are here. If you go to any village, they are borrowing 1 lakh each group. They're spending also. That's a major kind of a thing. Governments give in South India interest-free loan to them. It's not the same elsewhere. I will leave, let's say, Mahila and there, except they also claim, they are going to provide what you refer to that of cervical cancer vaccination free to all those young girls without knowing consequences.
Why
It's
do you
not
need?
a favor, but it's a dangerous thing. Let me come to the last one. I'll just quickly run through. This is farmers. You know what was happening over a period of time? Cost of production has been increasing. Productivity is decreasing because soil is destroyed by the extensive use of chemicals. I have data to show this. Actually, there has been from 3.3% per year, it has yield has come down. And similarly, when it comes to the question of productivity has come down. That means you put more inputs to get less and less. Earlier, for 1 rupee, you get 50 paise. Now, for 1 rupee, you get 40 paise. It's coming down, diminishing returns and pressure. But when it comes to the question of allocation, that I would just say that fertilizer subsidy, which was 1.9 lakhs in the current year, has been reduced next budget, 1.6 lakh crore. Food subsidies reduced this year. This 2.1 in the budget, it is reduced to that of 2 lakh crores. In the Pradhan Mantri Gram Sadak, we have seen that what is happening. They talked so much in Blue Revolution, Maschakar programs. You know what has happened? Actually, they have reduced that allocation to that Maschakar program by 134 crores. They reduced it, not increased. Similarly, they talked about dairy, and then, of course, animal husbandry. They have reduced actually next year by 193 crores. Overall agriculture allocation has come down. Something
Last minute, your passing comments.
Yeah, differences. And then talking in terms of these 4 pillars, you are actually weakening those 4 pillars and claiming credit for that. I mean, that symbolically use these 4 pillars to, again, it becomes part of the election strategy. There is much more to be done to improve those people. Perhaps I will stop here.
Jai Kisan, Kheti Badi Khatam. రైతు రాజ్యం అన్నారు. రైతుకు ఏ విధంగా సున్నం చుడతా ఉన్నారో చూశారు. ఇవి ఆధారాలతో we have presented with all facts. ये सब कुछ सच है और किसी को विरोध है हमारे शो में आ सकते हैं. मेरा नंबर 9440465339. इसी को गूगल पे और फोन पे भी है. कोई भी हमारे शो में पार्टिसिपेट कर सकते हैं. डू सपोर्ट DRTSPR channel, Citizen DRTSPR channels and Environment People DRTSPR channels. They are all in larger public interest.